Hey, you guys, quick message here. Today's episode has a bit of feedback throughout. However, the material is still really, really good. So I'm going to transition you now with some corny podcast intro music. Let's go. Welcome back to Specimen the Sociologist. This is your host, Jessamine Rickman. I tend to tell people that Jessamine rhymes with specimen, but with a J. I'm a budding sociologist on one simple mission, and that is to figure out how science can stabilize our social interactions. Today, we're going off script with a bonus episode to talk about the patterns of people pleasing. Now, I'm confident that you've heard this word either online or in a conversation, but over the next few minutes, we are going to shed some light and science on this behavior. Because the reality is this: people pleasing is far more casual than you may think. It can look innocent or even good on the surface, but underneath, it often hides fear, insecurity, or a distorted sense of identity. If unchecked, this behavior can lead to stress, burnout, resentment, and even a disconnection from one's true self, which ties perfectly into our recent mini series on loneliness and how I argued that it is actually an identity issue. Because, as a friendly reminder, loneliness has nothing to do with how many people are around you, and it has everything to do about your social needs not being met. So, what is people pleasing, and how do we define it here? It's a behavior pattern where an individual consistently prioritizes the needs and desires of others over their own, often stemming from a deep seated need for acceptance and a fear of rejection. But let's sprinkle in some sociology. Welcome Dr. Irving Goffman into the conversation. In his theory of dramaturgy, Goffman describes life as a theatrical performance where individuals are quote unquote actors managing impressions and performing roles for an audience in front stage settings, all to maintain desired self images. So, if we apply Goffman's theory to people pleasing, we could say that it's a form of impression management, presenting a likable or agreeable self to either gain approval or to avoid conflict. And this is where people pleasing quietly sneaks into our lives. Whether it's struggling to say no, overcommitting, excessive apologizing, or being overly agreeable, these behaviors might seem harmless, but long term, they're harmful. And actually, if I could take it a step further, people pleasing is easily embedded in our social structures. Take, for example, the patriarchal system, a social structure where men, particularly those in positions of authority, hold primary power and dominance in political, economic, and social spheres, leading to the oppression and exploitation of women. And if you do not believe that the patriarchy exists, just look at the fact that we've never had a female president, or the pay gap between men and women, or who holds predominantly pink collar jobs, right? So people pleasing is embedded in patriarchal systems through gender roles, societal expectations, and power imbalances. Now, these systems often condition certain groups, cough, cough, women, to prioritize others' needs as a form of safety or acceptance. That said, gender is just one lens. You can explore how people pleasing shows up across race, socioeconomic background, and even education, and how it manifests differently for each. But let's bring a little bit of psychology into the conversation. Now, let's pull in Solomon Asch, a Polish American psychologist who studied conformity. In the 1950s, Asch conducted experiments where participants were asked to judge line lengths while seated next to actors who deliberately gave wrong answers. 75% of people conformed to at least one. Now, this experiment showed how strong the need for group approval can be and how people will often reject their own perceptions to avoid standing out or conflict. Now, that same dynamic can translate into people pleasing tendencies, especially in close knit families, workplaces, or cultures. Now, between Goffman and Asch, we can say this: people pleasing isn't a personality trait, it's a learned behavior shaped by social structures, cultural norms, power dynamics, and the human need for belonging. And as the virtual cherry on top, it's often an adaptive behavior meant to survive within unequal systems. So, now that we have a sociological lens, let's bring in a little bit of specimen. Get it? Like Justman's advice. Anywho, how do we release ourselves from the invisible shackle of people pleasing? Well, it's actually quite simple because it's not about changing your behavior, it's about shifting how you see yourself. If people pleasing is rooted in a need for acceptance or fear of rejection, then we have to ground ourselves in our core values despite what people may say, what outcome may be, or really anything else. So, here are a few points to help bring this perspective to life. Point number one: rejection authenticates your identity. I found that rejection provides you a chance to reflect on what really matters and what your original intent was, whether it was applying for that job, applying for the university, pursuing a romantic partnership, or perhaps even walking away from a friend group. These moments of rejection operate as a form of feedback, helping you not only become a stronger person, but a more authentic version of yourself. Point number two: people pleasing doesn't actually please people. When you constantly conform to those around you, you deny them the opportunity to grow through disagreement, reflection, or navigating different values. And honey, don't we all want a more self aware society? And this point actually reminds me of an old literary folk tale called The Emperor's New Clothes. In short, an emperor obsessed with clothes is tricked into wearing invisible ones. Now, everyone, afraid to seem foolish, pretends that they can see the clothes until a child finally tells the truth and everyone starts laughing. So, the moral of the story is don't be the people pleasing officials who let the emperor walk around in his panties. Like, you're not helping him, just like people pleasing does not help others. Anywho, point number three: people pleasing is unhealthy and unsustainable. Psychological studies link people pleasing to anxiety and depression. Why, you may ask? Well, because when you constantly prioritize others, you erode your own boundaries and self worth. And over time, that creates emotional exhaustion and inauthenticity, which can spiral into emptiness, anxiety, or depressive systems. And to help thread these points together, I have a personal story to share. Earlier this year, I had a conversation with a family member. And while it was meant to bring clarity, it turned into an argument, and I made the decision in the end to go no contact. Now, I will preference that I used to be the princess of people pleasing, whether it was justifying poor behavior because a person had a tough day or overcommitting out of guilt. Because here's the sneaky nature about people pleasing: it can easily present itself in the form of quote unquote good intentions, but in practice, it's bad behavior. Now, returning to the conversation that I was having with my loved one, the straw that broke the camel's back was pure emotional exhaustion. I mean, a person can only be understanding for so long. have their boundaries compromised for so long and experience loneliness in a relationship before just pulling out the white flag. And I can remember clear as day sitting in the kitchen with tearful eyes and shaky hands, saying directly that I'm going no contact, that there's no need to reach out or to check in, and that I will be blocking your phone number. Because here's a little piece of advice: a boundary does not exist unless the other person knows about it as well. And what's unique about this relationship is it was one of a few where I actually learned people pleasing at an early age. And so after a conversation and that final separation, I thought the first emotion that I would experience would be peace and joy, but it was actually grief, guilt, and anxiety, the most unholy trinity if you ever asked. But the grief stemmed primarily from the past version of who I was in that relationship. By going no contact, it forced me to face reality, while staying in contact often resulted in me denying certain behaviors or rationalization to continue. And so, with this newfound distance, I realized how I operated out of an inferior version of myself for the comfort of another person, or to simply not rock the boat. Then came the second emotion, and that being guilt. I had to learn how to separate this person's past forms of generosity and the good days from their current behavior. Because again, two truths can't exist at the same time. And last but not least came the emotion of anxiety. After going no contact, my nervous system began to unwind from prolonged stress. Because when your relation to a person is primarily based on their needs, your emotional well being is subjected to their mood. And that hypervigilance over time can produce patterns of anxiety. But here is where everything shifted. As I began to ride the waves of emotion, I slowly began to find balance in my relationships and routines. By saying no in that one relationship, it ended up creating this ripple effect where I started spotting people pleasing tendencies in other areas of my life. And for the first time in a long, long, long time, I actually not only felt free, but I feel like I'm becoming the one that I was always meant to be. And as time progressed, and I'm talking about months, I slowly began to transition from people pleasing to having a healthy form of assertiveness. Because, reality check, you're not going to snap your fingers and automatically stop all of your people pleasing tendencies. So please give yourself grace. Now, instead, as those unhealthy patterns subconsciously resurface, you'll be able to notice them faster and be quick to resolve them. And guess what? I'm still in that process, but it is a fabulous one to remain in because I realized that over time, I'm less socially drained, I'm more emotionally balanced, and most importantly, I'm becoming a better person to others and to myself. Now, the last thing I will say is there's a difference between being aggressive and being assertive. The difference between these two comes down to how a person expresses their thoughts, needs, or opinions. Aggressiveness is forceful, hostile, and oftentimes disrespectful, while assertiveness is clear, direct, and respectful. And the reason I say this is because when you begin to dismantle those people pleasing tendencies in your life and become more assertive, you are going to expect pushback because people who benefited from your people pleasing may not like the new version of you. And that's okay because the authentic relationships will adjust and love you properly while the others will fade. And that too is okay. And actually, since we're on this page of healthy assertiveness, I believe that it not only has the opportunity to change your interpersonal relationships, but I believe that it can transform society. Like, just imagine a world where emotionally balanced people become our next politicians, corporate leaders, and even local bartenders. Anywho, this was supposed to be a short episode, but hey, what's new? Well, actually, speaking of what's new, here's what you can expect in the next two episodes. The next one will be a book review on Project Unlonely, written by Dr. Noble, who is a medical doctor and also operates in the field of public health. And in his book, he basically takes a medical approach to understanding loneliness as an epidemic. So I'm just going to provide a brief summary on his work, some things that you should take away, and a few criticisms that I have to offer. And with that episode, that will officially conclude our series on loneliness. And the episode after that will bring us into our new series, which will be around the concept of Dun-dun-dun-dun, the sociology behind anxiety. So I'm really, really excited for this series because there are so many people in my life who wrestle with different levels of anxiety. And so I'm really excited to see how I can have positive impact by, bringing science into our conversations and how we approach our everyday responsibilities. But on that note, I'm about to snuggle into bed, and I hope that you have a powerful day.